everyone, and welcome to Modern Wisdom Moments. I'm Catherine Gregory, co-founder of Modern Wisdom Press, and today we have an author spotlight with Dr. Seth Serxner, who I'm so happy to introduce to you. Dr. Serxner brings 3 decades of experience in academia, industry, and consulting to his understanding of health and well-being. And he's worked with hundreds of companies and their employees to help them live happier, healthier lives. He's published over 50 articles, and we are thrilled to help him bring his first book into the world. Dr. Serxner, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm so happy and I'm so proud. Here it is. Just have to show the baby. But yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate being here today.
Yes, author of The Wellbeing Effect. Love your background. And the subtitle is Bite-Sized Practices for Busy People to Live Happier, Healthier Lives. And so, Seth, just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write the book and who you're inspired to write it to.
Thank you, Catherine. You know, what really inspired me, as you mentioned, I have a long career in the health and well-being space, and most of it has been working with companies and corporations, and particularly the leaders who provide programs and services for employees and families. And that's been great. And I've been a thought leader in that space and provided new innovations and figuring out how to help employees engage in those programs. What happened during COVID was that employers started to say, Seth, you know, all this information you're giving us is really interesting and helpful. Would you be willing to talk to our employees? We do big webinars, especially during COVID. We've been doing a lot of outreach to our people, and there's a need for that. And as I started to do that, I felt really connected to that population. And we had a lot of chats, we had a lot of conversations. And so I felt like I was reaching a broader audience with that population. And so it inspired me to think about how I might do that going forward, perhaps with the book.
Right. And so in your work, you've worked primarily with the C-suite teams, the leaders, right, in these big organizations. Is that is that correct? Just helping them with
Correct.
well-being or
Benefits,
wellness programs. Right.
yeah, benefits professionals, HR professionals, people who are responsible for the health and well-being of their populations.
And I know that they're big companies, right? Can you name a few?
Sure, I've worked with companies of all sizes, everybody from Pepsi to Lowe's Home Improvement to T-Mobile, Cisco, you name it. And then lots of other ones that you might not have even known, like a company like Lumen, who provides cable and internet services and different things like that. So the whole gamut and lots of different industries, healthcare industries, tech industries. Employees are employees, people are people.
And wellness programs typically, can you just describe the difference between wellness and well-being and how you're framing this in the book? Because I think that's a big a new way of describing what you're talking about, this holistic approach, not just fitness, not just getting in shape or losing weight or quitting smoking, but you're really talking about like foundational, holistic, and emotional well-being in your book. So can you talk a little bit about that difference?
Yeah, there was a major shift from wellness, which initially was really about those lifestyles and behaviors that put people at risk of premature death or chronic conditions. Not very happy, but right. So we know if you're not active and you don't eat well, you don't manage your stress and you smoke, you may have various heart disease, cancer, what have you. And so it was all about what will kill you sooner. However, well-being emerged from the research that started to talk about what helps you live longer and happier lives. So one is about what will kill you sooner, and one is about what will help you live happier, healthier lives. And we've been very welcoming to the idea of let's talk about the more positive approach to a person's life.
Mhm. I love that. And I know that you do talk about, various foundational practices for, preventing death. And you also talk about really interesting mindsets, well-being mindsets. awe being one, joy. Can you talk a little bit more about those aspects of well-being that maybe most of us haven't really considered when we're thinking of well-being in the workplace, especially?
Yeah, so the way I thought about this is thinking about well-being in three pieces: foundational well-being, holistic well-being, and emotional well-being. And the foundational category has a lot of things that people might think of, but we think about it differently. Eating, physical activity, getting enough sleep, being creative, being socially connected. The holistic area that you're talking about really takes it to the next level. And it reminds people that the idea of being thankful and having gratitude, having a positive attitude, being in awe of all that is out there, keeping that curious mindset, having hope, all those things are so important. I pulled a lot of information from a book called The Book of Joy with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And believe it or not, apparently the Dalai is a bit of a jokester. So humor is a big part of well-being. And I want to just remind people that that well-being is not a to-do list. It's a mindset. It's how we embrace the world, how we look at the world, how we listen to others. And that's as important, if not more important, than some of the other pieces that we talk about.
Yes, I agree. I know you also talk about emotional well-being, and you have several chapters in there. One's about, self-care, not being selfish. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the emotional, and in fact, that was one of the first areas that employers asked me to talk to employees about. The burnout, the stress of COVID, the social isolation, and the idea that resilience is really a function of your people connections, your positive attitude, and your sense of purpose. And those three things we know are really important to resilience and emotional well-being. The other thing, though, that is so important is this idea of taking care of yourself. Self-care, in some ways, has become a bit of a cliche, but in other ways, it's so important to take a moment and not feel guilty about doing something for yourself. I remember as a young parent, I would go and take a little run early in the morning, and I felt kind of guilty. My wife had the baby, and we're plenty of things to do. But I knew that if I just got my little jog in the morning, I just would be better. I could think things through, I would be happier, and then I could be better for everyone. So this idea of self-care isn't selfish, and a friend of mine, Stephanie Shostak, has written a book on this, is really important for people to keep in mind for your emotional well-being.
You also talk about behavior change. And I think this is thought leadership, and this is a really important aspect of your book, is to really help people understand how to make change, because maybe they've tried to do healthy things in the past that didn't stick or didn't work, or they're too busy and they don't feel like they have time to fit it in. So can you talk a little bit about the chapter on behavior change?
So I spent a career on behavior change. That's my degree. Much of it is focused on how to help people change behavior. And I felt like it was very important to put that chapter up early in the book, because then people were going to have all these ideas. Oh, I want to meditate, or oh, I want to, have a better sense of humor, or I want to do these other things. And oftentimes we try things and then we're not successful. So sharing a very simple approach to behavior change that not only talks about small pieces, but starts with why bother? What's in it for you? Why do you really care? How will this support your purpose in life? And then get into a skill building piece and use the best science around skill building. And this idea that it's not an all or nothing approach, that it's a design and that you need to adapt. If something didn't work and you thought you were going to get up early and take a run, but you slept in, you realize, oh, maybe I'm not a morning runner. I'll try it in the afternoon. Not that I'm a bad person, because the brain actually does some things when you judge yourself that way and turns the motivation off. So sharing this idea of having self-awareness, understanding skill building, and then a maintenance plan. How will I keep it going? I felt like that was very important to share a simple approach, because frankly, we're not taught about behavior change as we grow up, it's all trial and error. And everybody can talk about how many times they've tried to change their diet or exercise or start meditating and it didn't work. And I really wanted to get things off on a positive footing and give people some tools and resources to make changes.
And I feel like, Seth, you walk the talk because I know that during this book writing process, you had a pretty major accident, a life-threatening accident. And you write about this in your book. And I think it's your well-being mindset that you have practiced for decades now that really got you through this. So can you share a little bit about that?
Indeed, I did. I took quite a crash while I was skiing. And when I kind of came to, so to speak, in the hospital, I had an enormous sense of surprisingly gratitude. I was so thankful for all the people around me who took care of me, that I was alive, that the human body was so awesome to start healing, and that it could endure the surgeries that I had. And it really brought into focus for me the well-being principles that I talked about and practiced. But even I get a little, slack in what I'm doing. And it really brought me into the moment. The way I ate, I slowed down. Just the way I listened to people, the effort that I had to make in everything just brought me more in touch with all those well-being practices. And frankly, to try to keep a sense of humor, to try to stay connected, so it really brought into focus the well-being practices, and that I very much viewed as a gift.
You're definitely inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and sharing your thought leadership in this book for so many people. And I know that you speak on this topic to organizations, and I know you've got podcasts. And so, where can people find out about your work, Seth? How can they reach you? What's your website?
My website is sethserxner.com. There's no period in between Seth and Serxner, so SETHSERXNER.com. And I have a fair amount of information on there, and there's contact forms as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Seth, for joining us today. And I'm just so excited to see this book ripple its effects out into the world.
Really appreciate it, Catherine. And that ripple effect, if I may, is just so interesting. We came up with it together and your team. But it really is so interesting to see how personal behaviors ripple to other personal behaviors, but also have effect on others. So this collective well-being, which again I talk about in the book, how do we affect others? And so it is a big ripple. So thank you again for allowing me to share it with everyone.
Thank you so much.